Bigfoot, Crunchin' and Munchin'. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Sean.
Fuck.
You
What?
can't
Was that
actually
an
be
accident?
serious.
Was that was the joke, right?
That was not a joke. I'm sorry.
You accidentally thought you were me.
I was like trying to think to say I was gonna do like a bunch of like engine sounds, and I just freaked
and
out.
it came out as "and I'm
It's-
Joe."
and I'm Joe. So I was like, yeah, and I'm Joe.
That's the sound monster
All
trucks
right.
make. They go Joe, 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 Joe,
I
Joe,
noticed
Joe.
that, yeah. Well, I can't go to the monster truck rally because I get confused.
Yeah, are they talking to me?
Yeah.
We'll keep running with this. This is
Why
funny. So
what else do we have to talk about?
has anybody ever in their life referred to monster trucking as Bigfoots?
No, I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, is that what I thought it was like the name of your truck or something in this game?
Sure.
I didn't know it was like a
Sure.
term.
But even still, like, that's a weird thing, right? The name of your truck might as well be anything, right? Bigfoot feels at least like your truck should have, like, I get it, huge tires, right? But it should have something else, like as a double play
You
for
know what?
Bigfoot.
Yeah, I'm looking, and there was a Bigfoot that.
Oh, there was
that
like an
actually
actual.
existed.
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
okay.
We're
There's
talking
like
about a truck, or are we like
Grave
Bigfoot
digger.
believers?
Like I know, the only one I think that I've heard of is Grave Digger, but
Got
there
it.
is a monster truck named Bigfoot out there somewhere.
Well, there's also a monster named Bigfoot out
Well,
there somewhere.
We named him. He could call himself something else.
Has anyone ever seen Bigfoot?
Not
I would
in
like
real
to know,
life.
actually, if the listeners ever went to a monster truck rally with Bigfoot there, you know? Like, it feels like a very niche thing. But, you know, again, not trying to downplay any sports, okay? All sports are important,
It's
especially...
a weird thing to.
I have
say.
to say it because it was just an observation, okay? I was watching ESPN, I was watching NBC, actually. Saturday afternoon, you know, there's like college football to be had and everything. And instead, they were doing like bull wrangling at like during prime college football hours. They were showing bull wrangling. And
Bull
it's like,
wrangling.
yeah, you know, like when you're
not rodeo.
sure, rodeo, whatever.
Oh,
Like you're on
okay.
top of the bull and you got to stay on for as long as possible.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the rodeo. Yeah.
See, that's how uninformed I am. And so I want everyone to know just how ignorant I am about this sport. But like, I get it. If you're in town, you go to that, right? Like, that's cool. It's in your local town. You're going to watch some guys stay on bulls for as long as possible. It's a very impressive feat. But national television? Like, it's the same thing with these monster truck shows, right? There's a reason why they just get the Sunday infomercial, right? And not like NBC at 4 p.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah, the only other time I can think of a bunch of obscure sports being shown on national television is the Olympics. And other than that, like you got to go to the dregs of local sports to get anything like off the beaten path. It is strange.
I do see now that Bigfoot is also trademarked in the game. So
I saw that too.
That's cool.
I didn't.
So that you all right? So we're Bigfoot, okay, and that's very important to the lore of this game because Bigfoot is, as you guessed, a monster truck racing game in which there are two different modes or two different types of action: monster truck action, that is top-down racing, and side-scrolling racing. So you're controlling this monster truck through various events. The core gameplay involves competing in races and other challenges like car crushing, hill climbs, and mud racing. The goal is to win races and events to progress through the game's various stages, earning points, money, and upgrades for your truck. All points we'll get back to, so I don't want people to think I'm just blowing through the entire game here. The most important part, though, is as you move through the events, you have to manage fuel and repair damage during your races, damage to your engine, that is, adding a bit of a layer between the money that you earn in these events and what you spend it on. So the game alternates between these top-down and side-scrolling racing segments, as well as the mini-games, breaking up the core loop with different challenges. Guys, just starting with what it feels like to be a monster truck, right? That's something kids love. They love to go and watch these monster trucks crush other cars or do crazy, like, flips and shit that other normal cars don't ever do, let alone a monster truck. How does it feel to be a monster truck on the NES?
I'll say that at least we'll start. I want to start with the top down because that is the first part you experience. It doesn't feel like a monster truck to me. It feels like weirdly floaty, which should be like the exact opposite of how a monster truck should feel. And I don't know, like there's no like it doesn't feel like there's any traction or like the physics are weird. It's like you're not connected to the ground. It's like you're on ice or something.
I will say that have you ever seen even like video of a monster truck rally?
Yeah,
I'm sure I have. I'm sure they drift and whatnot, but
I think like, and I'm not saying that they succeed here because they don't. I agree with you that this does not feel like a monster truck, but like the way that you're describing it, it kind of does look like that. There's like so much torque in those wheels that they basically like they're flipping and floating all over the place. But I agree. This feels like chaotic RC cars. Not monster trucks.
Yeah, I don't know how you would fix it, but like I feel like even if they're drifting, there's no sense of weight, you know. And I it's easy for me to say that I don't know how to actually fix it, but we've seen other games that have like a sense of physics, and I mean even Mario, which is you're not a vehicle obviously, but like you feel like okay, he's got a significant weight. And there's got to be a way to translate that to something much heavier.
But Joe, you mentioned the top down. Are you saying that maybe it's a little bit better in the side scrolling? Because I did feel, other than the ridiculous controls that we'll talk about for the side scrolling levels, I felt like the actual presentation of the monster truck and feel there did feel a little more like how you expect big tires to be, a little bouncy on the car, have some springy to the suspension. That was present in the side scrolling.
Yeah, I mean, I think by nature, the side-scrolling being kind of like a closer-up view with a more detailed sprite, and it being side-scrolling, so you can get the like kind of up and down, like vertical bounciness physics of it, makes it easier. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't really commenting either way on comparing them. I just wanted to start with that because that's like the first thing I noticed when booting up the game was that top-down thing. It took a lot of getting used to, and never really got to feel like what I had initially expected it to feel like.
It also doesn't feel like even like the core, like, is this what monster trucks ever do is correct? Because it seems like the only way to do this, and I guess I'm getting more into strategy here, it's more of a cock blocking simulator. Once you get in front of a car, you because you can never really, you have no real control over how fast you go other than, I mean, there's controls for it, sure, but I never really felt like that was a one-to-one like control of my vehicle. So I was basically just playing like a spacing game, just like I just gotta make sure I'm right in front of him so he can't pass me. I don't know if that's how you guys are playing.
I think it's how you have to play, because I think what's happening is that the screen kind of pulls you along. So you can't get too far ahead of the opponent, and the opponent can't get too far ahead of you. You always have to be on screen together. You die and then respawn if you get too far behind. But like it's always going to come down to one screen's length of difference. But once you get to the finish line, you can't get far ahead of anyone.
Yeah.
And just to stay on the top-down racing ones for a second, the controls of the monster truck felt very similar to another NES game we played, Bump and Jump. I feel like only Sean was on that episode. Do you remember Bump and Jump at all? It's okay if you don't, but it was basically like you were in like a sports car and you had an incredible jump, because there was basically like large parts of the road that were destroyed, so you were able to just jump really high into the air with this fancy sports car. And so for me to think that this monster truck game felt similar to that shows probably how far off they were from the monster truck part, at least in these top-down races, which leads to my follow-up question, not necessarily just for Sean, but he does seem to be our monster truck expert for this episode. We'll look forward to Joe's...
I saw it once.
Yeah, we'll look forward to Joe being the expert on the Dick Tracy episode, but for Sean here, is this even a thing monster trucks do during these rallies?
I don't think
racing
so.
Over long stretches?
No, I don't think so. But then again, like when I say that I've seen monster trucks in action, I'm saying I've seen like clips of monster trucks. I'm not saying that I was ever at a monster truck rally, nor watched a full video to see like is there an actual goal to the monster truck other than crushing things. I don't know. I just know that it's probably not cross country racing.
We're gonna have to look out for the next monster truck rally at the MetLife Stadium. You know, me and you are gonna have to find our way there.
I'll go.
Okay.
But one last thing about the top down that I want to talk about, and I don't think we talk about this a lot, but it was just so prevalent that so basically the sound design of this game is kind of all over the place. When you're playing the top-down version, it mostly just kind of sounds like a pinball machine because none of the sounds really correspond to anything. There's just a lot of like blooping and blopping until you use a power-up, which we haven't talked about yet. There are power-ups, one of which is a circular saw, and then it just turns into like the sound of like the most violent dial-up modem that you can think of, and God forbid both of you have the circular saw, because then there's two of that. And I don't know how the sound chip does it, but it's probably the worst sound I've ever heard the NES make.
Yeah, I honestly, there was a point where I thought like I needed to like blow in the cartridge. Like I thought that like I honestly thought the game was just glitching out. Like that's what it sounds like. Like it sounds like electric feedback coming out of the machine somehow. Like not even coming out of the speakers, like coming out of the NES. It's jarring.
Yeah, it also doesn't feel like it's not only intentional, but just that like it doesn't feel like it's connected to that saw necessarily. Like I just thought like maybe like some penalty was occurring or something. Like I didn't know exactly when that power up was first used that like, oh, that's causing that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of weird. There's not a lot of feedback. Yeah.
Sticking with the races for a second, the other than the competitor, the other monster truck that you're going up against, there is like, you know, different types of terrain and different obstacles in the way. The only like fail state though is kind of crashing into a tree or a large section of the woods. There isn't really too much of a penalty for being in the mud. Obviously, like, it reduces speed a little bit, but because you're always on screen with your opponent, it doesn't really cause, like, I don't know, there's never really, like, a large gap like there would be in another racing game. Like, in Mario Kart games, they're famous for rubber banding, right? Where you could be 30 years old, playing a game designed for children, and know how to drift perfectly on every track, and they'll make sure that the computers stay somewhat close to you and go faster than the game can possibly do, just to make sure that they stay competitive. That's the rubber band system. Here, it's like actual rubber bands are keeping you tied to this other car on the screen at all times, to the point where it's almost hard to find out, like, you know, am I controlling the speed of this car, like, appropriately enough, or is the game dragging me along? Are we both being dragged at the same speed? Does speed even matter here? Is it just about, to Sean's point, cock blocking? Like, is it just about that?
Well, yeah, that's where something that I was like unclear, because, you know, again, well, I'm sure we'll get into later that you can like power up your engine and power up, you know, your traction and all this. But does that matter on the top down? Because it never feels like your speed gets better there. Does that only matter on the side scrolling levels?
I don't know,
because
even if it even matters there. I would imagine it does, but I don't think it matters at all in the
reality,
like, more regular races.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll say on this, the fail state, is I think if you crash enough times, you do get a game over. But
true.
I'd say that winning the race is sort of like, yes, that's necessary, but your fail state would be you didn't collect enough like money and points to like, because there's like a more overarching thing going on between these top-down races and the side view tractor pulls and stuff, where points are accumulated and you get money taken out of your account to enter races. So I'd say like it's more of a softer fail state there if you just didn't win good enough. I don't know.
It might be a little weird that I don't mind the saws as power-ups on the actual stage, as if that's something that happens in a monster truck rally, but I am a little bothered by the bags of money just littered throughout the stage, because what's the point if the point isn't to make sure that you win the race to secure the larger prize, which happens also, right? But like the fact that there's money in the stage that you should also be focusing on collecting. It's kind of like if, a more sim game like Gran Turismo or Forza had, just dollar bills floating around on the track that you were also supposed to collect to upgrade to the next car instead of just winning the race, the more obvious goal to win the grand prize to be able to buy the nicer car.
I like that idea as like an actual motorsport, though. Like having just like caches of money that you have to get to.
And you have a vacuum on the bottom of the car.
Well, you'd presumably have to get out of the car, but the vacuum, we could workshop that.
Yeah, I think so. Like just a big shop vac, not like not for carpets or anything. This is like high suction. You do have to slow down, right? If you go too fast, you're just blowing the money away. But it does suck it up nevertheless. This is an interesting new monster truck race, which they invented here first on Bigfoot. Moving into the side-scrolling stages, the more mini-game-like things, you have the car crush, you have mud racing, you have the hill climb. These various events do different things, but before we get into the individual events, the way that you control the car changes a lot between how it worked in the top-down versus the side-scrolling. Here you have, a fuel gauge and a temperature gauge to keep in mind of. You have gears to change, and you have a really, okay, so you're waiting for the race to start, right? You get the two lights, right? And then you take off by holding down the A button for acceleration? Nah, that's silly, right? Or maybe just pushing down right on the D-pad because you're starting screen left, so you want to move to the right? Nah. How about alternating between right and left on the D-pad as if you're rocking back and forth? Does the car not actually have any momentum and the driver is throwing his body back and forth to move the car forward? What's happening here?
I honestly sat on this screen for not moving multiple times, and I kept getting, losing and then getting game overs eventually and starting over until I finally realized what you had to do. Probably should.
I don't think so. No, that's what I was gonna say. If this were a bicycle race game, that's kind of fun. That's I'm actually pedaling. No, I mean, again, I don't know. I watch clips on YouTube, but one would imagine that you aren't physically pumping two gas pedals when you're driving a monster truck. I don't think that's what happens.
It's also confusing because you don't have to do them really fast to get the car in motion. You don't have to just do right, left, right, left, right, left. You can just spam buttons if you're like me and Joe trying to figure it out without the help of the manual. In which case, you can do right, A, B, left, and now because you've pressed right and then left, it does inch the car forward a little bit, and you're like, oh, it was left. Left accelerates, and then you try that again, and it doesn't work, and you try some more buttons, but then you accidentally press the right again, and now it's oh, it was right, and then that's not it either. And before I figured out just to read the manual, I was using the entire D-pad as if I was rotating the wheels, going right down, left, up, right down, left.
Yeah.
You are the wheels, yeah. You are the Bigfoot of this car.
I honestly thought, because we've talked about it before. Some games I'm I'm not going to need to read the manual for this. This is so cut and dry. This is the moment that made me crack open the manual. But I still wasn't good at any of these. Because not only do you have to go left and right for no reason just to accelerate, you also simultaneously have to be shifting gears, and my typical the intuitive thing that goes through your head is okay, once you get to a higher speed, you start to shift up, or if you're going uphill, you want to shift down. All that is sort of what I was thinking, but I just kept losing these races. And I wasn't really seeing much shifting going on in my opponent's view, because you can see their setup too. So I don't really know what I was doing wrong, but I wasn't doing very well in these.
Yeah, and I think it's also with all these different things that you have to manage, right? Besides just like the actual controller inputs, like studying the UI of this screen and trying to figure out like there's a gauge for how, like your engine's running too hot, how fast you're going, which is kind of like, I don't know, does it really matter like in the grand scheme of things? Like you could see your other opponent, you just need to go faster than your opponent is going. The gear shifting thing thankfully isn't actually like something, you just press a button in the UI. It's actually like it looks like it would be a complicated D-pad layout.
But it's just the one thing you do. Yeah.
But I just feel like watching all those things, watching just those gauges, takes you off of the fun of watching your truck pull something really heavy or go over those hills or what's the other thing you do? Crush those other cars. You're missing all that because you have to watch that. And even watching that, I don't think I entirely knew what I was doing enough to like, I squeaked out some victories. I feel pretty good about that, but it was only on like replay attempts after replay attempts to make sure that I could make some kind of forward progress in this game. It's just a tough system to learn, but that is also like, we haven't seen too many of this. There is a point to be made about this side-scrolling part of a racing game is pretty neat, right?
So, but one more thing I want to mention about these like gauges and all this, like managing the temperature of your monster truck and everything. And like I said, I wasn't a big monster truck guy, but from what I know about the culture, if I were like a monster truck fan and I want a game that simulates monster truck, like I don't think I want like a sim where I have to manage the temperature of my car. I think I just want to crush things. And like I want a good feeling like controlling game, not like looking at all these gauges and looking, like you were saying, taking the fun away from actually playing as a monster truck is like, oh, I'm actually just like managing a bunch of systems. Whereas like I want to crush things and I want to have the feel of a monster truck without the like hard work and like math that you have to do.
I don't think there's any math you have to do.
But I mean, not actual math, but you know what I mean? Like it's like that type of like, I don't want like a cerebral experience where I'm managing all these systems. I just want to drive a monster truck.
I hear you. I don't know if we can call this like a sim right now. But I do hear you. I think that the biggest problem here is what we started out with, and it's that to accelerate, you have to alternate left and right. And I think the only way that makes any sense is that the game was just way too easy with just, using a button. So maybe this is their only way to make it engaging in any way. I don't really know what they could have done to make like just a destroy things monster truck game that wouldn't just be like almost like lawnmower. It's like pretending to be a lawnmower and just like, crush all the cars. I think it was a weird choice to make it a racing game I guess where I'm going with this.
Yeah, but I mean, you could have like, this side scrolling with a little bit of depth in it, and then it's like you actually just have to hit all the cars as you're going, and it's like it might be hard to swerve to this from this car, like crush as many things as you can or something like that.
Yeah,
I do think that what is giving me that feeling of like it's not, there's like a detachment is less so the gauges and more the like alternating the D-pad thing, but which also just makes it feel more like simulation-y to me, just because it's like, well, I don't feel like I'm directly controlling the car. I feel like I'm like doing a thing that is like powering the car somehow. It's really weird. But yeah, like I would like it to just be like, try and crush as many things as you can by like hitting them, and maybe they're placed in spots where it's like it's really hard to get to the second thing if you're gonna hit the first thing because they're so far away from each other, or like something like that.
The inclusion of these mini games, which kind of gives it a multiple events, like a not Olympic style, but just like the constant switching of what you're doing. When you compare that to maybe a more straightforward racing game like Excite Bike or Rad Racer, or even just, games that just are arcadey in nature that just do the same thing over and over again, like a Spy Hunter, there is something to be said about the variety here. I just feel like when you actually look at the actual difference between the car crush, the mud racing, the hill climb, those events, there's not too much different going on, or maybe I'm just too focused on like controlling the car compared to like the actual events themselves to notice a difference. But to go back to what Sean was saying, yeah, it is a little surprising that like the car crush isn't like a score-based thing from judges, but is instead like, you know, a finish line with your opponent.
I don't know. You know, I've said it a few times already. I don't know what actually happens in a monster truck rally. So maybe there is racing, and maybe that's the main draw. But that's not what I thought. I thought it was about like crushing shit, like Joe was saying. So I don't think any of us can actually judge this game. I think we have to take a step back.
I just want to see a car eat a car.
Yeah, I'm not judging it based on how true it is to monster truck rallies. I'm just judging it on how like much fun I'm having.
Yeah, because we already knew that you don't drive a monster truck by tapping left and right on the steering wheel back and forth, right? Like that's no way to drive a car. So
the jury's still out. We don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know. It could be like, you know how like you wouldn't intuitively think you steer a plane with your feet on the when you're taxiing, but that's how you do it.
I guess that's a good point. You know, another thing that the game does that is unique for a racing game, much more unique for the NES times. There's a little bit of resource management in the sense of like controlling how great your engine is and your you know your car parts and everything. That is something that is like secondary though, right? Like you kind of do get provided you win. You get enough cash to almost max out everything pretty early on, and then it's just about like, okay, well, I took no care of my engine to win that race, so now I've got to use the remaining money to repair that engine back to max.
Yeah, that's really all it is. There's really no balance in the resource management sector of this game. If you are winning enough, which I think like I think you're going to game over before you like get to a point where that actually makes any sense to like that you'd be focusing on that, then it's kind of just a screen that you have to press a couple buttons and then move on just to get back to max.
So it's another element of this game where it's larger to read about in the manual than it is to experience, right? There's not truly a resource management like there was in, we played so many games now that even I'm drawing blanks from time to time, but there was a like F1 style racing game where the money actually did matter. Do you guys remember that?
Was it Baz Luhrmann's
maybe it was Michael Andretti's World GP?
That one, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think there was something even simpler, though. I don't think that was the one.
It wasn't Rusty Rocket's F1 Platoon?
I got it. Ivan Iron Man Stewart Super Off-Road.
All I remember about these things are the names.
It kind of sucks that Bigfoot is just Bigfoot, right? They couldn't call it, like, Bigfoot's Big Monster.
Whoa.
I thought we were going to be playing a game where you were searching for Bigfoot, so I was a little disappointed.
That would be so much better.
That's just the opening level is with a car and you're just racing to find Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden when you got to the arena you were like, oh, I guess he's not here, but maybe he's in the swamp, right? You're in the mud race and you're like, maybe I'll run over Bigfoot.
Maybe he's one of the people watching from the stands if you were to slow down a bit.
Yeah, man. I mean, maybe it's just that we didn't find Bigfoot, meaning we didn't beat the game. Like, if we had done better, we would have found Bigfoot.
So really what this game needed to be was both you play as Bigfoot, the monster truck, teaming up with Bigfoot, the monster, to, like, take down some grander conspiracy like the Illuminati.
It's true, because I was going to say, maybe you are Bigfoot driving Bigfoot, but...
You're just the wheels.
You're just a guy. Oh, yeah, you are just the wheels. I forgot about that.
And this is just a podcast, of which I'm just going to make a couple more quick notes before we move on to our main attraction here. And that is that we will play another monster truck game. We have not. This was the first, as far as I can remember.
Is it a sequel to Bigfoot, or is it just so happens to also be about monster trucks?
It just happens to be about monster trucks. And for better or for worse, it doesn't have a licensed monster truck in the title, so maybe they felt like they needed to, as a result, spend more of the time on the development on gameplay rather than securing the rights to a famous monster truck. But we will play Monster Truck Rally in 1991, which is really right around the corner, like 5-6 years from now.
Yeah.
So we'll check that out. And apparently, brief summary here, Monster Truck Rally is more focused on straightforward races than the car crush, hill climb, mud racing stuff that we experienced here in Bigfoot, which makes me think that we should really try to get to a Monster Truck Rally before we record this next game, because maybe it is actually just a race. Maybe it's just NASCAR with big cars.
I'm Googling it right now. What happens at a Monster Truck Rally?
I want vivid details. Yeah, I want more than just like what happens in the dirt. I want what happens at a Monster Truck Rally at the concession stands.
Yeah.
What do they sell,
Okay, this is just the first thing on Wikipedia. The first thing on Wikipedia here is at Monster Jam events, monster trucks face off in 3 forms of competition: racing, 2-wheel skills, and freestyle. I don't know what freestyle would be.
It's like dancing.
Yeah. Racing is a traditional heads-up tournament where the first truck to cross the finish line moves on to the next round. The final race of the night is for that particular event's championship. So there's racing.
Cool. I'm glad.
There's racing, and then there's always, when you're on an episode of Nostalgia, there's always the Essential Games list. Even though I didn't know that Bigfoot was a monster truck, and to be fair to myself, I don't think people are going to know that going forward. I don't think people in 2050, I feel like the further away we get from when Bigfoot was operational, the weirder it gets that he got a licensed game. But I guess Bigfoot is at this time is in the pantheon with Godzilla, right? Of just really cool big things that kids care about. So let's get him a video game. And honestly, the use of a licensed vehicle, when was the last time you saw that? Knight Rider? Bigfoot's up there with Knight Rider now. That's pretty cool. So I do like that it had a draw for actual fans of monster truck rallies, I want to call them, but I guess they're actually just races. However, forget about the controls that we nagged about this whole game. I do feel like it's just lacking in also the kinds of things that make a monster truck rally cool. There should have been more environmental effects, destructible landscapes, bigger jumps, the hill thing. You just kind of you don't launch into the air, and I feel like that's what's cool at a monster truck rally. That's we got to make sure we get that shot so we can show it in the commercial. You got to show a big jump, you got to show some fire, pyrotechnic stuff, and who knows? Maybe in Night by Night, they weren't doing that in 1990. Maybe that was later stuff. They were doing that in 2000s. It was more modest, but that's the kind of stuff that I want to see in a monster truck game. More interactive obstacles. And while the resource management thing is offering something, it's very small in the sense of strategy. And so maybe there was a way to not build on that, but also have some kind of career mode with more meaningful customization of your truck over time, because the money was such an important part to the game, right? You're collecting it both by winning races and it's on the racetracks themselves. Using that money to actually customize your monster truck and have a more drastic change as you face tougher and tougher opponents. Really, the opponents just get tougher because they're more precise, they're faster, right? There's nothing else that's really changing about them or you. So if you don't get better at the game, as you continue to play, you'll just lose to those tougher opponents, because there's nothing about the car you can really change. And so I would have liked to see that. So for all those reasons, it's a no. To be honest, probably more a meaningful Essential Games List vote than the game deserves, but I took the time to think about it. Sean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm not going to get that far into it. I didn't like this game. That's pretty much the long and short of it. I don't think this is the soul of... This is not the soul of monster trucks. I really didn't appreciate the sounds. We don't talk about sound design very often, but this was especially heinous. The accelerator thing we've talked about over and over, that's just so bizarre. I don't know how they can... They should never let that down. I think that anyone that worked on this game, whenever they worked at the next development company, that they're like, hey, you were one of those guys that made the monster truck game with the bicycle mechanics, and they should be laughed at. I hope that they were. So no, this isn't an Essential game.
Joe.
I think it's an interesting idea having these like two types of gameplay, and in one you collect what you need to buy things to help you with the other. I don't think it was executed well at all. And I think everything that you guys said and just my sentiment throughout the episode is pretty accurate as to how I feel about the game. It doesn't stand out, a little more of a frustration than a fun time for me, so I'm definitely also going to say not essential.
All right, that's 3 no's, but I just realized we never talked about like the fact that you are traveling the states from from place to place. Like there's a map and you started in LA and I think you end in New York. Because again, it just doesn't really matter. That's just another way to tell us that we moved on from level 1 to level 2. Nothing about the game itself changes as you make your way through the circuit. Am I crazy,
or are we never going west in any? I feel like we've had games like this multiple times where you're like going across the country. You're always going from west to east, right?
I don't know about that.
Didn't we have like 2 other games like this where you're like starting in California and going to New York?
I think that's just because it's Japan developing it, though, right? Like you're getting that way of thinking.
I do have one last note about this game to point out, and that is just the fact that they can't get a handle on scale. I think the only time that scale makes any sense in this game is when you press power on and it brings up the main screen and you have this very nice little pixel art of the monster truck, and then when you're in the top down stuff, I guess scale doesn't really matter, but you kind of look like RC cars, and then you get to one of the levels in the side scrolling and there's people in the stands. That seems normal enough. But then you get to the next one. I think it's like the mud race, and they're just like hanging off the fence, and they're like half the size of the car, which I think isn't really right. And then the winning congratulations screen. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it shows like the driver of the monster truck hanging out against one of the wheels, and that wheel is massive. It is so big, and the truck is so tiny. Like, I just don't think that scale was ever really thought about in this game. It's weird.
You know what else is weird?
The essential games list.
Oh yeah, let's do that again.
We skipped over the whole section about other Bigfoot licensed video games, of which there are a few. There's Bigfoot on the NES, obviously. Bigfoot Collision Course for the Wii.
You mean Bigfoot license as in Bigfoot the monster truck, not
the
Bigfoot
monster truck?
The
yes.
Sasquatch? What?
The other Bigfoot monster truck games, such as Bigfoot Collision Course for the Wii, Bigfoot King of Crush for the Wii, Monster Truck Destruction for, I guess, Steam. Which features Bigfoot. Monster Truck Madness 1, 2, and 64. They didn't skip 3 through 63. That's just Monster Truck Madness 64 on the N64. Also all feature Bigfoot. Damn, Bigfoot really, really making a name for himself.
Maybe we just really missed out on this big like part of the popular culture in the 90s.
That's also the Wii, so I don't know, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Worth mentioning, too, that best I can tell, on the Bigfoot, the video game, Wikipedia, there isn't a link back to Bigfoot the truck, but on Bigfoot Collision Course for Nintendo DS, that one links you back to the truck. This is important information people need to know because I'm discovering it in real time. But Bigfoot was started in 1975, and I'm going to be honest, by today's standards, Bigfoot looks kind of small for a monster truck. I don't think people would be that impressive.
It's sad. Past his prime.
Yeah, I can't really tell, but apparently Bigfoot's still doing stuff as of 2018. Bigfoot...
6 years ago.
Does he have any kids?
2018 introduced Bigfoot 21.
But does he have any family? Or
he doesn't have any family or kids.
Okay.
Beam Software, who developed this game, is not Japanese. They're Australian. I think the same rules apply. And I'd like to end the episode on that note.